All right. Good evening. This is Patrick Dean, and I just want to talk with you for a few minutes. And glad you could join me here in this video. I want to, scientifically speaking, I want to talk about why people act like such jerks. and when I say people, I mean we, me, I, the rest of the people. So I was thinking and looking back at this whole mess that we had a week ago that caused death and destruction and problems, and it seems to show up in human nature all over the place. And I went back and to some of the literature, and I wanted to share with you about an experiment. I want to talk about why we can get so crazy, and then maybe some of the things that we can actually do about it to help ourselves so we don't go so nuts all the time and cause all this havoc. So uh, let's start this way. Let's start with the visualization. And the visualization is going to be about seeing yourself in animal skins walking along about 50,000 years ago along a trail somewhere, and you're walking along with your brother, and ahead of you about 30 yards is say Uncle Joe or whatever you wanted to call him from back then. He's walking ahead, and so he walks under a tree. And so what we're going to talk about here is the experience of influence, why we are so influenced and how we get influenced. So you are walking along now, and ahead of you, there's this tree. Uncle Joe walks under it. He's alone, and the saber-toothed tiger comes down out of the tree and jumps on Uncle Joe and kills him and drags him off. And you're standing there, and what is the first thing or the first experience you have other than screaming is you probably run with your brother in a different direction because you don't want to share the fate with Uncle Joe. And so that experience of seeing a tiger jump out of a tree and jump on someone is fixed in our memory. And I think things are fixed in our memory for a couple different reasons. One is repetition, of course, but the other way that we create memories and we remember things is through emotional involvement. And so this was certainly an emotionally involving experience, and we remember this. So we are less likely, or at least more awake when we walk near or a tree. And then one of the amazing things about human beings and some that is different from animals is that human beings are can communicate experience through language and words. So one of the adaptabilities we have is that we can share experiences. So someone can learn that a tiger can jump out of a tree from you telling a story or from you hearing a story about it. We can learn and not actually be in the have the actual experience of what occurred, not the visual experience, but we can learn from the story. And so those stories are critical for our survival. It's that sharing experience because we certainly didn't have armor. We certainly didn't run fast. We certainly didn't have a bunch of claws or strong jaws or anything like that that was adaptable. Our adaptability was our ability to understand and to be have awareness and then develop a language that we can share that awareness with the other people. So there is the beginning of powerful influence based in survival. So keep that one in mind. And then I wanted to talk about this experiment from the 50s, an old experiment, psychological experiment that was done in the 50s. And a lot of experiments since then have sort of been based on the format of this experience. So uh, let's see. Here we go. There was a guy named Solomon Asch, and Solomon Asch was a professor, a doctor of psychology, and he wanted to do an experiment on conformity. So what he did was basically what he got together was he got about 15 people in a room. 15 people in a room, and they 14 of those people were trained ahead of time. Basically, 14 of the people were actors. Okay. And so the 15th person was the subject. When that person came in, that poor guy, the guy in the center here, he's the subject of the experiment, and the other guys are actors right there. So when they came in, it was supposed to be an experiment in perception. That's what our subject was told. So Solomon Asch put 3 lines on one side of the board, and he put the guiding line on the other side. So the guiding line was the line that they wanted to compare to the other 3 lines. And it was very simple. The question was, which of the lines, A, B, or C, is the same length as the guiding line? And so if you're listening to this, you can't see it, but it's three vertical lines. And if you're watching, you can see. And it's obvious when you look at it that C is the line that compares to the guiding line. And so the correct answer would be C. So here's what Solomon Asch wanted to find out. He wanted to find out if how the depth of influence from other people. And so he had them do 15 rounds where they identified the line closest to the guiding line. And they did this all out loud. And this is what's awesome. They did it all out loud. And for the first 2 frames, everybody identified, because it was pretty obvious, they identified, like they would say C. That's the line that compares. So 2 frames, everybody in the room was in agreement. Then what happened was, per the script, the other 14 people, the other 13 people, or no, 14 people, we had 15, right? They started to say a different line. And so they would all agree, all the people but the subject would agree on a different line. And what Asch wanted to find out was, how long would it be before the subject started to change their answer, even though they knew and it was obvious what the right answer was. And so this poor subject in here, he's trying to figure it out, squinting, and here's what they find out. 50% of the people that were the subjects changed their mind within 2 or 3 or 4 frames, And 50% of the people then went completely along with the whole group of people that were saying the wrong answer. And then 75% of the people, at least for several frames, changed their answer to match the answer of the group, even though it was the perception was that the right line, they knew the right line, but they changed their experience and their answer around it, started to doubt themselves. And so what happened was, and what we discovered was, or what Solomon Asch discovered in this experience, was how much we are influenced by other people. And there was that powerful influence is inside all of us. So it starts with the whole thing about our perception, about staying alive, and then the part about being with the group. Now, there was also another study, much more recent, about the sleep habits of human beings. And I thought this was interesting, and this ties in as well to survival. And so the sleep habits of human beings, people sleep better when they feel safe. I mean, this sounds pretty obvious, but that's an ancient gene. 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, when we were roaming the plains in Africa, And the only, or the base survival mechanism we had was our tribe, was our group of people, was the people around us. Then you could sleep out in the open, and then you know that at least somebody would be on watch. And so the idea of having people, uh, a tight group around you that could watch, was a basis for survival, because a single individual, or just two individuals would not ever survive out on the plane. And so also the whole thing about facial recognition, that you needed to be able to recognize the people in your tribe. And so that's why we generally have in our face has a lot of we can change our face and our and how we look in our emotions and everything, and they can be recognized, as whereas many animals don't have the facial musculature to do that. And so here we go again. So it's another thing about recognizing people, or being close to people, or knowing who our tribe was, and all of that based in survival. So I think if we look at how groups or mobs or bunches of people get together, what's driving that underneath is a powerful gene to belong, to be part of something. And sometimes that can be used to forward things in humanity. Sometimes that gene can really get us moving towards something that changes things for the better. But that gene also works in a way that works against us when we get into a mentality of all the people around us, and we are actually we begin to have an experience uh, that we begin to see things the way that other people see them, not exactly as they are as facts. So um, this whole that thing is called confirmation bias, and it goes back to our survival mechanism with human beings, from my point of view. So what happens is we want to be part of something. We get pretty committed to being right about what we're right about, and because we don't want to change, or we don't want to lose our part, our status in the group, we begin to go along with it. And I think there's plenty of tragedies, and the major tragedies in history is people going along, not listening to their intuition, but going along with a crowd of people. Um, so I think this is one of the things that happens. I think people, we may start with a righteous cause, but then it just gets out of control when we feel like we're being attacked, or we feel like something's going on. So um, lastly, I wanted to talk about some of the things that you add. Now you've got a group of people that are really committed to be right, and you can add to that uh, this need that some of these needs we have. So I was doing some work with the police department in Los Angeles years ago, and I did a bunch of ride-alongs with them, and it was a really dicey part of Los Angeles, and there was a lot of stuff that went on, and there was a lot of car chases that happened, and there was a lot of other stuff that occurred, and I was in there, and I was wondering, I was thinking, boy, these guys are so men and women are so dedicated to the cause of a better community, of keeping people safe. And I think that was a true characterization of one of the driving forces. But there was another driving force that that I've thought about a lot, and that driving force was adrenaline. They loved the experience of adrenaline. They love that experience, and who doesn't like that experience of that high that comes from the experience of getting yourself into places where things are different, or things are edgy. I love for many years I loved to surf, and that was all about the adrenaline. And all of us have done stuff uh, because we just love the adrenaline of it. We'll get into an argument if things are too even, or too conformist, or too what would you call it, comfortable, or whatever. Sometimes we'll just start arguments because we just love the adrenaline experience of the anger. and anger generates that. So I think there's when you have groups of people and there's an opportunity to really feed off of each other's energy, then you got the adrenaline stuff going on, the addiction to that experience, and that can, like I said, that can be used for powerful positive purposes, or that can be used for negative purposes, like it was a week ago when we had all that occur. So I think I'm just to just I just wanted to talk about that because I wanted to wrap it. I wanted to put a put some ideas out there and work it through myself because when I see people, I really have a tendency to jump on my judgment about people, and I think or how wrong they are, how crazy they are, how stupid they are, all that kind of stuff that we come up with. And we're part of the whole human system, so I am definitely, and I'm susceptible to all of that stuff myself. I think what keeps a lot of us from the destructive part of it is an awareness that that we are here to make a difference for other people, to have a world that works for everyone with no one left out would be a great cause for us all to get behind and use some of this tribal stuff and use some of this awareness and this language and all this kind of stuff in a positive and powerful way. So I don't want to get into blaming a bunch of people all the time and seeing myself as better than them or smarter than them or any of that other stuff that I'll often come up with, because I don't think it is true. And everyone is susceptible to all of this kind of stuff. That does not excuse behavior, by the way. By the way, there's always a price to pay for every behavior, and people will pay the price uh, for causing mayhem or buying into all kinds of different stuff. And the price should be paid and will be paid karmically as well as legally. Things There's a price to pay for when you do that. I'm not excusing that. I'm just saying that human beings, all of us human beings, have all of these tendencies within us. So I want to thank you for listening to this short, um, I don't know, short idea of how we all are connected at the deepest level, and how we have to be vigilant all the time so we don't fall into these traps and cause all this chaos. Anyway, I appreciate you guys very much. I'm going to be on next Wednesday, and we'll go through some other stuff, and we'll go deeper into the psychology of human beings and how we can create 2021 as one of the greatest years of our life so far by working together. Anyway, love you guys, and I will see you next Wednesday, 5 o'clock, for another Facebook Live.